Lisa. Welcome to Up Your Confidence podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. And a little story about how I met Lisa. Lisa and I, we were in a paid to podcast together, and her podcast is called The Resiliency Factor. And we just connect right away because resiliency is something that I'm really passionate about. My podcast is about confidence, and Lisa should tell us more about herself. But I totally was like, you got to come on the podcast and we need to talk about resiliency. So I'm super excited to have you here today. So how are you doing, Lisa?
I'm doing okay, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Can you spend some time and introduce yourself? What have you been doing? I know you're a confidence coach. Tell us a little bit about that. And what is your podcast about before we get into the good conversation on resiliency?
Sure. So yes, confidence coaching is one piece of what I do. So as an online entrepreneur, I work with other passionate and purpose-driven entrepreneurs and primarily helping them to develop what I like to call rock solid confidence, teach them as well how to be vibrantly visible online, and of course, taking that beautiful wisdom and transforming it into wealth. So those are the three pillars upon which my coaching is founded. It's confidence, visibility, and wealth. And in that order, actually, because sometimes I feel like the order gets mixed up in the online marketing world. People only want to talk about making money, and that's wonderful. But if you're not confident, you're not going to be visible. And if you're not visible, you're not going to make money. It's just plain and simple. In the online world, that's the way it works. And this business is now about 5 years old. I would say about 4 years with that particular niche of combining confidence and visibility, and then wealth creation. Combining the three, because I love all three. So it's hard for me just to separate, one of the pieces out, like I was saying. And the name of my podcast, which I just launched, is called The Resiliency Factor. And it's where we have real, raw, vulnerable, and unscripted conversations with real entrepreneurs all around the globe, with resilient entrepreneurs all around the globe. And it's been a really incredible experience so far.
Yes, I'm sure. And I wanted us to talk about resiliency because I believe, just like confidence, there's actually a parallel. I feel like resiliency is a muscle that you have to build. I've read an article a couple of years ago, and it really touched me how we usually don't even know if we're resilient, until we go through things, right? So talk to me a little bit about, how did you come about even resiliency, and why do you feel resiliency is important, and what is the resiliency factor we need to have?
Yeah, so all those questions are great questions. And let me just sort of try to, break it apart and figure out if I can answer sort of one piece at a time for you. So resiliency for me, the way that I define it actually, has definitely, it's transformed over the years. I think of myself as highly resilient. Nowadays, I didn't always feel that way. In my teens, my 20s, even my early 30s, I felt a great deal of, that's what I'm looking for, like a lack of resilience, a lack of self-confidence, a lack of self-esteem. And so even the littlest thing that went wrong could really throw me off for a day or a week or even a few months. I was super sensitive to everything. I always wanted to be perfect at everything I did. And so getting a B+ instead of an A on a, graduate level, exam, was something that would really hurt me deeply. I would feel like I failed somehow. And so what I realized in the last, I don't know, maybe 15 years or so, since I really started doing work on myself, meaning not being afraid to really look at my fears and my, little, gremlins in my head that we all have from time to time, but really attacking them head on and going to therapy, going to different healers that I needed to work with, being definitely aligned with God and praying a lot. I've been doing that work for a very long time. And I think it's why I'm resilient now. And this year, COVID aside, this year has been the most challenging year of my life. Because in February, I lost my mom, and that was devastating. And yet, I still was able to, sort of keep myself together, continue on with my business. In fact, my business flourished this year, which again is kind of ironic when you look at all of the really catastrophic things that are happening in the world. And again, like my own personal world was falling apart. My mom passed away, and then I wound up, breaking my foot during COVID, and my car was stolen, and it was just a bunch of things that kept happening. And at some point, I just kind of looked up at God and I was like, you must have some kind of like sixth sense of humor, because to have that all happen in like a 9-week period was a lot to take in. But the beautiful thing was that I had so much support and so much love and so much guidance. Like there were so many people who were really loving me and supporting me through it. And that was my online family. It was, the people that I've created relationships with, and they were there for me. And so I feel like between my faith and between the work I've done and then the people that I've cultivated relationships with, it's helped me to be incredibly resilient, which is the ability to experience, life's, untimed curveballs that come at us. They come at us fast and hard and out of nowhere sometimes. My mom passed suddenly. That was nothing any of us were prepared for. It's knowing that no matter how many times I get knocked down, I'm going to get up one more time. And I know that sounds cliche, but that's really what it's about, because we're all going to get knocked down, all of us. And we can choose to stay down, which is what I did in my 20s, in my 30s, early 30s. One thing would knock me down and I would be down for months, right? I would be incredibly depressed for months. I would feel incredibly anxious for months. I feel like my whole graduate level experience, at least when I was doing my second master's in psychology, I feel like I went through like 2.5 years of just chronic anxiety and chronic worry and chronic depression. Like I think I cried every day. And I think like, whoa, what a difference between then and now. And the only thing I have to go on in terms of what's changed is I've changed. I've made changes in my thinking and in my perception of the way that I view myself and view the world.
I have so much question about that. One other question that I have is, do you think for resiliency, because you mentioned about you had to change, right? And so do you think it's a mindset, I don't want to say mindset game, but is it a mindset shift? Is the work have to start with the mindset first?
Yes, 1,000%. Yes. It always has to start within your own mind. And if you can't get a handle on your own thoughts and on the things that are coming into your mind and into your head, you need to do some work there, because that's where it all starts and where it all ends. And so the most successful people in the world are those who truly have learned to master their thoughts. It doesn't mean that they don't have bad thoughts or they don't think bad things sometimes. We all do. We can go down a rabbit hole very, very easily, very quickly if we're not careful. Even starting my podcast, it caused a little bit of anxiety in me. I felt a little unsure of myself. I felt a little bit uncertain. And so it was like these kind of old feelings were emerging of anxiety. Not to the extent that I was like paralyzed by it, but again, if we're not keeping an eye on it and kind of letting it know that we're in charge, essentially, then it can wreak havoc. Our minds are so intricate and they're so beautiful, but they can also be quite dangerous, essentially. Like if we allow that to happen. So you have to make a very conscientious effort to get rid of the negative thoughts or figure out where they're coming from and then eliminate the source of where they're coming from and then replace them with other thoughts that are more positive and affirming and empowering, because that space that's in your mind it needs to be filled with something. So if you're not filling it with good things, chances are all the bad things are going to sort of seep in and just kind of creep in. So you have to be vigilant about it. It's like a daily practice, essentially. Just like, brushing your teeth and taking a shower, and personal hygiene, is essential. Well, so is taking care of your mind. It's like taking care of your body, but it's actually probably more important.
Totally. All right, so I really love that you mentioned about daily practice, and I want to hone in a little bit more on that, Lisa Marie, because I know that personally I've dealt with anxiety and depression just last year after I had my son, and the negative thought. We always have it low key, right? And I do meditate, I do my yoga, I have my daily practice. But what do you think has been really helpful for you to make that big shift that you mentioned about, what are your daily practice? Because I want the folks that are listening to us or watching us, to just have like tactical, things that
like what can they actually do to help themselves?
Exactly.
Yeah. So when I really think back to when I was suffering through severe depression, severe anxiety, what I always came back to was that it was my own thoughts that were producing the uncomfortable sensations in my body, right? So everybody knows what anxiety feels like. Many people know what a panic attack feels like, and they're not fun. They feel pretty god awful, actually. And so looking back and reflecting on when I was going through that really significantly, I know now that it was always a thought first that triggered the emotion and then the physical response. And it was true even when I was depressed, right? I would often speak really poorly about myself to myself. So self-talk is really, really crucial, that so much so that if you don't get a handle on it, I really think it's like, for me, when I look at it, I think as though if we cannot master our thoughts and get a handle on our own self-talk, I feel like that's when really bad things happen. And not just to us as individuals, but to the family, to the community, to the, the larger society, to the world, right? Like it's all tied in. So I feel like if we could each just get a handle on ourselves, and by that, and I'll explain what I mean by get a handle on your thoughts, right? Because it's kind of like,
get a handle on your thoughts.
Yeah, like get a handle on your thoughts. It's like a title of a good book, right? Get a handle on your thoughts. But essentially what it is, it's recognizing that, your thought pattern will inevitably reflect or trigger an emotional response. So it's not like the emotion happens first and then we go, oh God, like, why am I shaking all of a sudden? It's not usually what happens. Usually we say something like, oh my God, this is bad. What if I fail this exam? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, until the emotion of anxiety gets triggered, and then we feel it in our body. We feel the anxiety, the sweating, the heart racing, the inability to breathe. Sometimes we feel like we're going crazy for having a panic attack. These are all very normal, common things that people will say when they've had a panic attack. And I know that because, well, I've had them. So what changed for me significantly was the way that I spoke about myself to myself.
Yes.
And I had to be very intentional about it. And it started off with me literally writing positive I am statements. Even when I was going through a rough time or I was at a really crappy job and, of course, there was nothing there to make me feel good about my self-esteem, I started taking a big pen, just a regular pen, and whatever I could find. And there were days I didn't even have paper. I only had the palm of my hand. And I would literally, like, while I was working, I would just start writing. But I would always write something very positive. It was always like, I love you, or I am okay, or God is with me. Very positive, gentle, healing, comforting thoughts.
Wow.
And I decided that I would try this little exercise. So I wrote out very specific I am statements that were very personal to me, that meant a lot to me, that made me feel good about me. And I didn't believe them all at first. Like, I am happy, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm beautiful, I'm blessed, I'm wealthy, I'm abundant, I'm on purpose, I'm prolific. Can you tell that I know these like the back of my hand?
Yes.
Because I recite them every day for
Yes.
at least 45 minutes.
Wow.
And let me tell you how I do this. So I know that everybody's pressed for time, myself included. I don't have an hour to pray, an hour to meditate, an hour to exercise, an hour to do positive affirmations, right? I have to bundle the things that I do. So given that I have a background in human behavior and, psychology and learning and all of this, I said, you know what? I've often studied when I worked out. So if I were on a bike or on a elliptical rider, I would study for exams that way. And I discovered that I did really well in the exams that I studied for when I was in this like heightened state of awareness. So while I was exercising, like fresh blood is pumping, fresh oxygen is pumping, you're alert, you're awake, you're very much like alert to see like what you're reading and understanding it. So I would exercise and I would study. And this is something I just discovered years ago. And lo and behold, I always did really well on all these exams and tests. So as I was growing through my own struggle of, negative self-talk and everything, I thought, what if I exercised and instead of reading or instead of watching TV or even listening to music, what if I just started reciting these positive I am statements over and over and over and over again? Wow. I thought, well, let me try it. So this was about 5 years ago. I started using an elliptical rider in my home. I bought an elliptical rider. I started using it. And I put it in front of a blank wall. And I wrote out all my affirmations on these beautiful like Post-it notes, but they were like shapes. They were like cutouts. So I had like butterfly ones and hearts and stuff like that. And I wrote them all out in black marker. Like I just wrote them out. I am happy. I am healthy. I am strong. And I posted them. I just posted them right in front of my vision so I could see them while I was working out.
Right.
So I would use music, and I do enjoy listening to music when I work out, but I would use music that was also very like empowering and uplifting and didn't necessarily have words. So an example would be like the Rocky IV soundtrack. I know that sounds so funny, but like anyone who's ever seen Rocky IV,
oh yeah,
it's like a really like pumped up, like
yes.
There's a whole section in between there where he's like training in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
That music is so powerful. So like I would listen to a song like that while
even be chill, just thinking about that song.
I know, right? It's called training montage, actually, which is really cool. So I thought I'm going to put on training montage because it's amazing, like beat to it, amazing song. You visualize the movie. And I started saying, I started reading, right? And I'm on my elliptical and I'm going, not with the arms because I still have a shoulder problem, but I'm moving my legs. My arms are stationary. And I'm like, I am healthy. I am strong. I am blessed. I am wealthy. And I just kept reading them over and over and over and over again. Well, eventually you just memorize them, right? It's just, that's going to happen automatically. So I realized that as I was doing this, I was actually feeling really good in spite of having chronic pain, in spite of having, these other issues I was dealing with in my body. I realized that I was just so much calmer during the day. I was more productive. I was more energetic. I genuinely really started to like myself. And I don't mean love myself just because everybody talks about self-love and you should love yourself. I really started to like myself. And I think there's a fine line, but I think there's a significant difference.
Yes, totally.
Because again, self-love, it's wonderful and it's beautiful, but a lot of us talk about it, but what does it really mean? Right? And so for me, liking myself meant that I could enjoy my own company. It meant that I could do things that I never thought I could do. Maybe if I found the courage to hop on a train and go into New York City by myself all of a sudden, right? It was this newfound confidence, reassurance, feeling like I'm okay. Like I'm going to be okay no matter what happens.
You're really fearless.
Yeah, like I'm going to be okay. Like bad stuff is going to happen and we can't pretend that it doesn't. We can't pretend we don't get sad or we don't get angry. We're human.
Right.
And I think sometimes like this highly spiritual community or the highly what's what I'm looking for? Woo-woo, right? People refer themselves as woo-woo, right? That's a thing.
Whole conversation might be classified as a woo-woo conversation. That's the reason why I asked for like tactical thing.
Exactly, right. So a lot of the times, when we ascribe to those sort of principles, we think it means we're never supposed to get angry. We're never supposed to get sad. We're always supposed to take the high road and we're just supposed to meditate it all the way, all the time. And while that would be beautiful, the truth is we are human. Right. There are things that are going to knock us down. Maybe we cry. Maybe we get angry and scream into a pillow. I always say, whatever you do, just don't hurt yourself physically and don't hurt anybody else physically. Like that's it. Other than that, do whatever makes you freaking happy. If you need to go and buy yourself flowers and bring them home and put them on the table to make yourself feel good, then go do it. If you need to sit down and journal, go do that. If you need to exercise, go do that. Do what's going to make you feel good internally and externally. Right. But I'm telling you, writing out those words and then saying them repeatedly while I'm pairing really powerful music and uplifting music and my body's moving and my mind is alert, it's like, it worked. Like it worked. Yeah. I mean, so that's a very tangible thing people can do.
That's a great recipe because I can testify that each of those individually works for me because I am a strong person that believe in self-affirmation,
yes,
and self-love. And I'm a techie person, so I have an app, that I look at, and when I used to go in office and things are really going crazy, I just get into myself, look at my little app, and then it's telling me, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm okay, and it just bring you a quick instant gratification of positivity, to get you. Because one of the things that I always say is, it's okay for us to get mad or be unhappy or be, sad, but you cannot dwell in the sadness. It's not really healthy for you to dwell in the sadness. So I'm always like, rent start, rent end, sadness start, sadness end. So I feel like true. You have to equip yourself as a human being to know, what are usually what I say is, what are the 5 things that you like to do? And those 5 things is really different for everybody, and I know my 5 things. And then I know for a fact that when to get going and things are really crazy and I'm really feeling down, because we're always going to feel down for some reason, right? And the feeling down is really based on our expectation. So you got to manage your expectation. You have to learn to be grateful for 0 expectations. So anything that is about that is always make you happy. But when the going gets tough, what are the 5 things that you can do? And once you find, at least for me, once I found those 5 things, it make me easily kind of like recover, So from the listening to music, that's why I said all those 3 combination work for me individually, because if I get to listen to music, there's something about listening to music that just make me forget what's the reality happening, and I allow myself to just go in that world, in that realm, you know, and find peace. And then walking out also, you know, do help me. So any combination, you know, if I'm able to meditate while I'm walking or listen to music while I'm walking, you know, so the fact that you mentioned that, you know, you get to do the affirmation, you listen to music, and then you're walking out, I'm like, this is a triple
It's a triple
threat.
decker. Like you can't, like you said, individually, all those things are going to be amazing for you, right? Exercise is great for your mind and body. You know, listening to music is awesome. I've always listened to music as well. Whenever I was going through a hard time, I would have like beautiful Christian music I would listen to. I'd have all different kinds of music. You know, I had my angry music, you know, my Eminem music, you know, my Rihanna music, my angry music, you know. And yeah, it's interesting. And like you said, and then just even doing like the affirmations out loud in front of the mirror can work. So I honestly was like, I'm just going to put them all together and see what happens. And to this day, those five, no, I've like, I think there's eight. There's like 8 core ones that I have that I just say them, and I can just like eyes closed, you know, hands behind my back. I just know them, right? I just rattle them off because that's what I know. So then if I go to journal, I'll write them out again. So I'm always reinforcing these things about myself. And sure enough, most of them have come to pass. Like, I am happy. I am genuinely happy. Do I get sad? Sure. But on the whole, am I genuinely happy? Yes, I'm a happy person. Am I healthy? Yes. Do I have certain things that are not so great? Like I have this chronic neck and shoulder thing. Yes. But am I healthy? I am.
Right.
I'm very healthy internally. And, you know, I thank God for that every day. I think about, you know, wealthy, and wealthy is not just about money. It's about having all things that you can appreciate, right? And just be grateful for. So am I wealthy? I am wealthy by the way that I judge it. Financially, yes, but also just in the relationships I have. Emotionally wealthy. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I don't know, when I started saying those things, like I wasn't making the income I am now. So I'm thinking that it worked somewhere along the way.
Exactly. Totally. And I'm loving the affirmation. And I mean, I have an 8-year-old, 9-year-old daughter, and I'm just getting her started in the affirmation, because another thing that you mentioned quickly was the mirror, right? Like that was another thing that worked for me a couple of years ago, and I still have them, you know. And I was just talking about that to my daughter, like, we're going to create some affirmation and put it on your mirror. When you wake up in the morning, you say those. And she was like, what is the purpose? I'm like, because it's just training your mind to, because your mind will trick you, you know, will trick you. And imagine you wake up in the morning, just like you brushing your teeth and you saying those affirmations, you know, I'm beautiful, I'm happy, I'm healthy, you know, I'm strong. And it just pump you, get you out. So, because like you say, what story are you telling yourself? Because when you tell yourself some amazing story about you, other people can no longer define you, you know, you get to define yourself. And usually when kids are growing up, you know, it's important to define who you are that way, you know, and who you are. And I want to talk a little bit and shift to faith, because I know you're a woman of faith, and faith and resiliency goes hands in hand, right? So
1,000%, yes.
So let's expand on that a little bit, and how your faith plays into how resilient you are.
So my faith has definitely been the cornerstone of my survival. And I mean that through and through. I mean, God is the reason why I'm still here today. Because even in my darkest times, there were times in my life where I didn't feel like living. And I know that God is the one that brought me through that. Like, I can't even think, there's no doubt in my mind, right? Because who else would have taken away such evil thoughts, right? So, and I'm grateful to God that was like 20 years ago, you know, when I was going through a really bad time. So I know that I'm here. I'm here for a purpose. I know that God has plans for me. What they are exactly is not always clear, but I try to listen. I try to pay attention to different things that are happening in my world. I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in divine timing of everything.
Right.
And what I've also realized is that surrender is huge.
Oh.
Surrendering and trusting in a power that is greater than yourself is by and large one of the most important pieces that I think has truly helped me become the woman I am today.
Totally, totally. I mean, I couldn't say any better. And I think that's one of the things that drew me to you the first couple of times that we spoke. Because for me, and I'm writing a book, and the two important pieces that I put together is really the beginning, grounding yourself, got to ground yourself. And I keep having this picture of like us human being walking in a forest, and there's a wind, different wind coming toward you, and you have to be grounded, maybe grounded from the bottom, because I feel like you that's where you put your feet, but you got to be grounded by a higher power. And for me, the higher power is God. And that's how you traverse every situation, every journey. It's not going to be pretty, but grounding yourself into higher power, God, help you go through every situation. And that's where your resiliency really come from, knowing that, I'm here for a reason, I have a purpose. And if I've been through that, I can go through another one, and there's always a happy ending. And it's a cycle that we go through, and that is actually life.
That's absolutely right. And I could feel it as you were saying it. Yeah, I mean, without a higher power, like, who do I have to thank in the morning when I wake up?
Exactly.
And I know, especially everything I've gone through this year, like I said, losing my mom was by and large the worst thing that I could have experienced this year. The broken foot, the stolen car, being locked in the house a few months. I can deal with those things.
Right.
But losing my mom that was significant. And I remember I was up at the hospital and she wasn't conscious, but I was at her bedside and I was pleading and almost begging her to wake up. And I haven't shared the story all that often, but I'm starting to share it more. And I was just sobbing and holding her hand. And I had on a Christian song by Hillsong. I think it was by Hillsong Worship. And it was a beautiful song. It was called Oceans. And I was playing it in her ear and I'm crying and I'm sobbing and I'm like angry and I'm just really emotional.
Right.
And I experienced something that I would only describe as being supernatural, right? Because there's no other explanation for it. But in the midst of this happening, I felt this energetic, like, jolt to my body. And yet I was filled with absolute peace. And I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't begging. I was just peaceful. And I held my mom's hand and I kissed her forehead and I stepped away and I sat down and I said, I think I got it, God. I said, I understand if you need to take her. And I completely surrendered it. And a lot of people have said to me, you're doing so well, because I was very close to my mom. And I said to them, but it's also because I have a strong faith and I feel like I know where she is. I know that I'm connected deeply to her in spirit.
Yes.
And I know that I'll see her again. And that's the truth. Now, are there days where I go and I just sob out of nowhere because I see something or hear something? Or, of course. But by and large, I'm at peace because I was given that moment to have that peace where I knew that I was going to be okay.
Yes.
And I even gave her permission to go. And personally, I feel like I experienced her transferring her light to me so that I could continue doing beautiful work in the world.
Totally, totally. And that's what I was gonna say, that every time you lose somebody so close, you have an angel looking out for you, totally.
Yeah.
That is giving you, it's like you have another wing, a superpower. You have like an angel that you know by name that you can call upon, and this year has been very, very, very tragic,
It has for everybody,
for
for everybody.
everybody, and I was trying to reach my phone and remember the quote, but I will not cite the exact quote, but I was telling one of my friends that lost her brother not too long ago that, and because she's going through that, it's so fresh, she's going through that, and it was so sudden, and he's so young, and I was telling her that take your time, and and I read a quote somewhere, and I'm gonna quote it in the show note definitely, because it really touched me. And immediately, I'm just one of those people, is I easily feel people feeling. I don't know if that's okay, but like when somebody close
Yeah.
to me is feeling something, it get to me, So when I saw this quote, I automatically thought of her, because she was one of the person that I know super close that was grieving. But the quote, not citing directly, say you can have joy and grief in the same moment.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have joy and grief. And when I sent it to her, she would just send me this big heart. She's like, oh my God, this is what I'm going through. One day I'm like grieving, like, oh my God, I can't believe God, you're doing this. And then the other day, I'm just happy that his kids are here. And I remember all the memory. And I was like, this is going to
Mm-hmm.
be, that's what the articles, that's what the quote was saying, and
It's absolutely true. And that's, I think, what, people have asked me, and they're like, but how are you doing it? I have friends who are like, I would have fallen apart. I wouldn't be able to function. I wouldn't be able to work. And here you are, like, starting a podcast, and you're working and you're doing well. And I said, look, it doesn't mean that I'm not crying. It
right,
doesn't mean that I'm not sad. It means that I'm allowing myself to feel it fully, but not get so overwhelmed by it
right,
that I feel like I'm not functioning.
right,
And again, if this had happened 20 years ago, I'm pretty sure it would have knocked me down pretty hard,
right,
really hard. Yet I took the time to do the counseling and the therapy and the meditation and the Reiki and the practice and the yoga. And it's like, I've been working on myself for the last 25 years. I mean,
it's a
good
good
to know it's
finish.
paying off.
It's a good finished product,
Yeah, like I'm
It's
okay with it,
we always work in progress, but it's super important, and that's what I really want to end before we leave here. It's very important for each of us to work on ourselves, to define, what is it that we need to do to go from, because you only you can know, you have to know what is not working for you, what are the gap, what are the empty spot in your heart, in your feeling, and I always say, one of the things that I always say in my podcast is we got to stop telling ourselves stories, because the stories is the one that kill you a lot, so if you can comment on that, that would be good. Like, what are the story that we need to stop telling ourselves? Because I know you started out and say we need to tell ourselves, we need to tell ourselves some good stuff about ourselves, but at the same time also we need to stop about the story, especially family stories, or things that has happened in the past, or things that is happening now, that there's so many things that are negative happening around us, but not only turning off the noise, but what are the story that we need to stop telling ourselves.
Absolutely. So I think for certain you have to identify, like, what were some of the things that happened to you as you were growing up, and what were the people who are most influential in your life saying to you about either life or about you, right? And so, for example, if you grew up in a home where your parents, if you had two, if you had one, whatever it was, a blended family, but let's say they were always talking about how they didn't have money, and that money was never an abundant thing. It was just, they were always struggling, that, well, we work really hard and we still have nothing to show for it. As a child, you're taking all that in, right? And what's happening is you're developing a relationship with money, which is, this is going to be hard. I'm always going to be broke. No matter what I do, I'm always going to be behind the eight ball. I love this. Money doesn't grow on trees. Right? We were all taught that as kids. Money
Yes.
doesn't grow on trees. And like, we get it. Like, okay, ha ha ha. Like, it doesn't grow on trees. Like, you can't just make more of it. But in reality, you can make more of it. You
Right.
can work. You can find honest, decent, good paying work. In this day and age, if you know how to use a computer and you've got a skill set that will provide a solution to somebody else's problem, you can make money. And so that's an example, right? A lot of people struggle with that. They struggle with, is it okay to make money, right? Maybe you grew up hearing that, wealthy people were selfish, right? Or wealthy people, were wealthy because they just stomped on everybody else, right? And didn't care. They were mean and they were selfish, and that's why they had a lot of money. Those are stories. Those are generational stories. Those are family stories that need to be examined and re-examined, right? So we have to look at it and sort of say, hey, is this why I struggle with money? Or is this why I always feel like I'm broke? Is this why I feel like I'm always hustling and I'm not making enough money, or I'm spending too much money? You have to look at, where's that coming from? And you have to decide to break the cycle, right? You have to rewrite the story, but you can't rewrite what you haven't already acknowledged. You can't change what you don't acknowledge.
Yes, totally. I love all those. Those are like good nugget that people can take away. Thank you so much. One last question that I like to ask all my guests is, what do you do to up your confidence every day, Miss Lisa Mary?
So, one of the things that I really love to do, and this is aside from exercise and my affirmations and
Right.
like all that good stuff, something that I do every day that really and truly brings me joy, makes me feel good, makes me feel like I'm doing good things for my body, is that I'm really intentional about the way that I eat. And I'm very intentional about the way I even prepare my food. So a prime example, like I love salad, and I am a vegetarian, but I will have fish on occasion. And if I'm making like a really big salad for dinner, which is what I do like 100 days out of, 100, I make sure that when I'm cutting it up, like I'm enjoying the process. I'm enjoying looking at these beautiful colors and this really healthy, nutritious food that I am blessed and grateful to have, because I know not everybody has that luxury. Not everybody has the ability to stand on their own 2 feet and create a beautiful, array of colors and textures. And so I pay attention to those things. And even though I eat the same every day, which I know that sounds a little bit crazy to some people, I eat the same thing every day for like the last 10 years. I'm talking breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, everything. Like I'll change up like a little bit. Like I have an apple at lunch every day, so I'll change the variety of apple, right? But it's still got to be an apple. I'll change salad dressings, but it's still got to be a big salad, right? So those are the only changes I make, and I mean that sincerely. So I, even now, which is so funny to me, like I get excited when it's time to eat. I'm like, ooh, yay, it's almost lunchtime. I'm like a kid.
Same thing,
I'm like,
though.
I get my almond butter sandwich and my Ezekiel bread, and I'm gonna eat my organic apple, and I'm gonna crunch on my brown rice crackers, and I'm gonna just love this food because I love the way it tastes, and I love that I'm like I'm blessed enough that I have amazing food at my disposal. I don't have to like, and again, saying this in a humble way, but in a way that I'm really acknowledging it. Like I am so grateful and so blessed that I don't have to worry about like, oh my God, how much is this? Is this on sale? Do I have to put it back because I can't afford to buy, diapers or food for my other family members or something? Like I'm in a position now where it's like, if I want to go to the store and I want to buy all organic food, I buy organic food. I don't even think about it. And that's a really beautiful place to be.
Yes.
And so it does make me feel confident because I know I'm putting good things into my body. I know I'm feeding myself well. I'm keeping my immune system up. I'm keeping my energy up. I'm hopefully, putting a lot of antioxidants into my body so that I can age well and feel good. And so, yeah, that makes me more confident.
It's working. I love it.
Thanks.
I love your answer. It's like you feeding your internal body and then it's making you confident from the outside. Love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Cool. So how can we follow you? Can you share your social media? What are you up to? What are the exciting that you got going on?
Absolutely. So I would love, love, love to connect with any of you on, let's see, any social media platform because I'm on all of them. So Facebook, just look me up, Lisa Marie Pepe. Instagram, it's at Positive Transformation Coaching. I think you'll have the link, or at least by the time we air this, you'll have the link.
Yes.
Um, and definitely check out my podcast, The Resiliency Factor with Lisa Marie. And that's on iTunes, it's on Google, it's on Spotify, Stitcher, all the good, big time platforms. So
Awesome.
just feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was
Thank
fun.
you. Yes, it was great. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Lisa. As we discussed, Lisa and I share how resiliency is rooted in our faith. So I wanted to expand a little bit on my faith and how our faith is manifested in our life and the impact of faith on resilience. I see so many folks that are supposed to be religious folks, some really faithful church going folks, but they don't have a strong faith backbone. They don't take the time to develop and grow their faith. Faith is like a muscle. It also needs to be grown. Faith is a personal relationship with a higher power. In my case, it's God. But most folk I see and I observe, they put their faith in people, well, in the men of God, so called preacher, prophet. You can put a name in the rabbi, preacher, etc. They worship the man of God as if he is the one that drives everything. Then they get shocked when the men of God disappoint them or make a huge mistake. We've seen in the news and in social media when the so-called men of God perhaps kill his wife. There was a recent story in the news about that. Or a man of God in the church sexually assault or abuse teenager or teenage boy in the church. Or even better, most recently, men of God, leader of church, tried to tell us who to vote for because of the personal belief or the personal gain, for personal gain. We need to get back on focusing our faith as a personal relationship with God. Everything you need, you have a direct link and line to God and the same power. And we all have the same power. We are actually all children of God, all of us. We need to act like it instead of giving our power and privilege for order to abuse it. I'm not saying not to follow a religious leader. What I'm saying is that you should not be your that should not be your way to go. You ought to get educated, inspired, motivated to grow your faith yourself. For me, it's simple. God is the author and finisher of my faith. My resiliency is rooted in my faith, and I know God got me. I know 2020 has been dramatic, tough, tough year. You could have gotten COVID. You could have lost your job, lost client, lost money, lost your entire life savings, lost your business, lost so many business deal or contract, or almost lost your car or got your car repossessed. Or even you had to decide between giving your kid food, putting food in your pantry, paying for your debt, or pay for your car. You could have even get injured, broken your feet like myself, fell down a stair, or even had a car accident. But you are still here. You are here for a reason. You're here because you are resilient. You're here because you have went through hell and back. Some people are even shocked you are still smiling and standing. But it's simply because your God, our God, my God is great. and is greater than our current situation. My God is great, and He got me, and He got you, and He got all of us. In fact, physical strength is measured by what we can carry, spiritual by what we can bear. Never quit. Just know that once you have the source approval, everything you ask in due time, this will happen. This has been a tough year, but when you look hard, you can still find something to be grateful for. That is where you can begin to pick it up back. I love to tell this analogy about an elevator. Elevator, when you press the elevator button, you request the floor that you want to go to and you wait for the floor to arrive. You wait patiently. You have a certainty that this floor, the elevator is going to open and you're going to get it and it's going to take you to your exact same floor. So it's the same thing when we come to God. When we ask something for God, when we have a personal relationship, and we have our faith in God, we have to be waiting. We have to be patient. When it comes to our God Almighty, we have to practice patience. And I like to always share the 3P of success: planning with prayer, persistence, and patience. That is what has been helped me for years and kept me resilient all this year, no matter the ups and downs that life throws at me. So to conclude, I want to say life goes on. Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient. Lisa Mary, I want to thank Lisa Mary for sharing her personal story and her journey with resiliency. She's available to speak on self-improvement, empowerment, resiliency, overcoming obstacles, confidence building, positive psychology, entrepreneurship, online business growth and development, and online visibility strategy. So I'm going to make sure I share all her links, all her website in the show notes, and you can check it out and visit her page and listen to her podcast, Resiliency Factor. She has some amazing guests there. And to finish the show today, I want to share with you not one, but two quotes because they're all so valuable, and I hope it can inspire you. The human spirit is stronger than anything that can happen to it. C.C. Scott. Women, I like this quote because it talks to us as women. Women are like a tea bag. They expand when you put